My name's Colton Miller. I've been here at Boostability 10 years, coming up on 10 years. And I am the director of SEO, which just basically means I look at our data, make sure it's going the right way, and then make sure that we have the right products in place to support our customers and make them successful.
Nice. And I am Mike Marsh. I'm the SEO manager on the marketing team specifically. So I help with Boostability site and help the marketing team with SEO specific decisions. Colton is my go-to man if I have any SEO questions. So we have a special treat today to have Colton here and to be able to listen to him. As we go through today, we'll be doing a 2019 recap, but also doing 2020 SEO trends.
Perfect. You can follow along on Twitter where you're tweeting at Boostability. You can also send us your questions through that or here through the platform. We've set some time at the end of the hour to answer those questions, but if they are pressing to what we're talking about in the moment, I'll interrupt these guys and ask it. So with that, I will turn it over to them for a quick 2019 recap.
Awesome. So we want to go through this, even though the title of this says Top SEO Trends of 2020, we want to give a little context for the 2020 SEO trends by talking about 2019 and what led up to a lot of these predictions, a lot of things we're going to be talking about. So to go quickly into the first slide that we have here, we're going to be talking, but you don't necessarily need to look at the slides. Hopefully we're talking and you can just follow along with your ears. So the first thing that we're talking here is we called 2019 the year of the core algorithm update. We saw a lot of changes to how Google rolls out these core algorithm updates and less guessing in the SEO realm because they started to announce and in some instances pre-announce when these core algorithm updates were actually going live. There was the March 2019, there was the June 2019, and then the September 2019 updates, all corresponded with tweets from the Google Search Liaison Twitter account that you can follow and that you should follow and that you probably do follow. But yeah, the reason why this is such a big change, like I mentioned, was because there's no longer a guessing game, right? Like there's no longer, oh, I see these changes. I assume that there's a core algorithm update. You can just look at the Google Liaison and be like, oh, this corresponds with my data, right, Colton?
So something should be noted there in the sense that there are constantly updates being pushed out. Some are small, some are testing, some are regional, some only apply to certain versions of Google, certain sections of Google search, like image versus video versus maps, stuff like that. So these core algorithms are really shifting fundamentally how Google understands the query, and that's the big kind of denotion here is when those roll out, it's really affecting a lot of people and a lot of queries and a lot of websites. But the smaller ones, I mean, at least coming from Google, they're saying they're doing thousands of these updates per year, which means that there have probably been 2 or 3 updates today alone. So it's not that you won't see anything kind of unexpected or unannounced. It just means that typically if that's seen, it's going to be at a much smaller scale than these ones that we saw in 2019 where it's pre-announced. And even the newest one, the newest core algorithm update.
That Google announced a couple days ago.
Yes, so the first one in 2020. So I expect that trend to definitely continue in the sense that it's all just labeled this core algorithm update, but at least it's a good denotion and direct from Google that, yeah, some major did change, but smaller things will definitely roll out and smaller things will have varying impact on people.
Also, to correspond, to kind of give a little information for the listeners, we're going to be releasing a blog either like tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow, where we go into a little bit more depth of all of these points, where if you want to know more about what each one of these core algorithm updates, we provide sources and we do a little bit of dissemination of that information. Going into the next one that we have, we saw in 2019 how these algorithm updates and these core updates help define quality content. And there was a lot of changes. Like Colton mentioned, there's a lot of different changes. There's the core algorithm updates, but then there also were updates to the quality rater guidelines, right? There's a lot of good blog posts that we're going to provide in our blog post where it shows the changes. It says this is what happened, this is what it said before, this is what it says now, And in those quality rater guidelines, a lot of things changed regarding what the EAT score, or the expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Google kind of defined that a little bit more. They also defined your money, your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is really key, especially if you're in the search landscape and trying to, kind of compete in there, mainly just because this is Google essentially telling you verbatim what they're looking for, or what they expect, or how they might judge something. Obviously, these are for their human raters and testers for, fueling algorithms. So while it's not always a direct one-to-one, this is a really good indicator that if they expect that, trustworthiness, as an example, comes from a source that has lots of content about a subject, that you probably need to have that if you want to succeed. So these definitely correspond with the core updates, and obviously they are telling us what Google is trying to look for. And the modifications are good to know, just because it shows that the definition that they may have had for quality content, or what the minimums were for something like your money, your life, is shifting and it's changing. And that's not to discourage anybody. It just means that you always have to keep building, especially for your SEO, presence.
Yeah, and so that's something that we definitely saw in 2019, is that what qualifies quality content according to Google is always changing. It's always, if you look at it from a customer standpoint, Google wants the customer to be engaged, to get the queries and the answers that they want for the questions, the problems that they have. And so in 2019, we saw a lot of shift in what Google viewed as quality content. The next point that we have is the search intent understanding, just very, very similar to defining the quality content and going back to that Google wants to facilitate your needs. They also want to know what is the intent of each query. And so in 2019, we saw a rollout. One of the rollouts here in October, at the end of October, was the BERT update. And you've probably heard a lot about the BERT update. And if you want to know what that stands for, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're really smart, I guess it makes a lot of sense, but it's bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. So if you don't know what that means, then get out of here. No, but essentially what that was is it's training Google's algorithm to help with natural language processing, which you'll also hear quite a bit in the SEO realm, which you probably already know. That natural language processing helps with search intent. And Google actually released a blog on their webmasters blog that did a nice explanation of what this algorithm actually meant to search queries, right? Mm-hmm. And in the blog that we're going to release, we also mention that blog as well. I'm going to keep on referencing that blog because I helped. Colton wrote it. I hopped in and helped a little bit yesterday, and we were able to pump something out. And so I think it'll be a really great resource. But essentially, the BERT algorithm update was for this intent-specific searches, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so BERT, the one thing you've got to understand is that RankBrain came out a few years ago, I think 2015 or 2014, somewhere around there. And RankBrain essentially was trying to understand very complex, long tail, terms or queries, right? So the example there would be like, I want a tutorial, but I don't want a video. And in the past, that emphasis on I don't want a video may have been missed because it's just keyword based, and so they wouldn't have necessarily understood that you want to actually subtract a video. So RankBrain came in and essentially helped kind of modify that so that they could actually parse out queries into, maybe an additive, maybe a negative, maybe a plus 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 onto what it might be, and just kind of more granularize different queries. So BERT is really key in coming along and essentially saying, hey, a RankBrain may not have been kind of the most comprehensive or the best at understanding some of those relationships, and essentially tipping that on its head and saying, oh, we actually do understand it much better now. And we understand that if you're looking for something, that even if you're not phrasing it correctly, that we understand that that intent is actually that you're looking for, X or whatever it might be. So that's really key. And kind of like it notes on the slide here, we saw this with the early updates going as far back as 2018 that, the medic update, things like that, where it really shifted the landscape, but it didn't necessarily change who was there. It just shifted who kind of showed up and why they showed up.
Yeah.
And it really kept hitting on this intent over and over again. And all the, kind of core algorithm updates, leading up to BERT really shifted that continuous understanding of, intent and trying to essentially get a user to an action. So BERT is definitely the largest update that they've released in years.
Was it 10% of all search queries were affected according to Google, I believe, or is that?
Estimated.
Estimated.
So they said, roughly 1 in 10 queries will be impacted, but we don't actually know any of that. That's their guesstimate of what they expected to have happen. And obviously they haven't shared anything concrete saying here's how many queries were affected, but they themselves did note in that blog post that we're referencing on Google's site that this is going to be and has been the largest update that they've pushed
past 5 years.
Something like that. Yeah.
So that happened in 2019. The next thing that we have on here is the voice search growth. I haven't been to a house in recent memory where they don't have some kind of smart home device where you can do a voice search and you're in a room and you can just say, hey, Google, this, or Alexa, this, or Siri, that. In 2019, everyone saw it coming. Voice search grew, and it grew, and it grew. That kind of corresponds with also what we're going to be talking about in 2020. Surprise, surprise, it's probably going to still grow. But what we saw in 2019 is there was a shift in how those voice search results appeared, or not appeared. I guess they don't appear. You hear them.
How they were stated.
Yeah, how they were stated. And in a lot of instances, structured data and rich markup and that kind of metadata was pivotal. It was paramount to those voice search growths. Actually, the last webinar that I was on was me and Brady Emerson, and we talked about featured snippets, we talked about microdata, we talked about Web 2.0 and that kind of intent, that kind of technology behind the voice search growth. So if you want to, shout out to the featured snippets webinar, go onto our YouTube channel, hit it up, watch it, it's great.
Shameless plug.
But yeah, so 2019 saw a lot of that. 2020, we're going to see more. We're going to talk about it more a little bit later. But yeah, no surprise there.
No, yeah. Everybody expected 2019 to be the year of voice, and it definitely was. And surprise, surprise, BERT, who actually understands voice better, comes along with this. So I'd be highly surprised if the year of kind of voice search and the core algorithms wasn't really gearing towards we're getting more voice queries, we're getting more chances to understand how natural language actually plays into a search, and if that didn't actually fund and kind of feature data wise the BERT update and some of the other core updates that we saw.
The last one that we have for 2019 is the paid search gain on organic search loss. In 2019, if you have, I imagine that everyone listening has used Google, but if you've noticed on SERPs, there's been a lot of change in how ads are served up in SERPs, in how and the amount that are served up. And in 2019 was no different than years past, but we saw an increase in that kind of ad space that's really creeping in on organic searches. And so more and more ads were pushed above the fold, like I said, encroaching on those organic search, and it got longer on mobile devices, and that we even started seeing ads on maps for the first time in 2019. Yep. It was funny, on the team, we were talking and we were looking at like restaurants, and we were looking at the little pin drops, and one of the pin drops was green, and we were talking about it and we were like, why is this pin drop green? And then we hovered over it and it was an ad, and it was like, oh my gosh, we're starting to see ads in here for these restaurants and so 2019 we saw ads in the maps.
Yeah, I mean, with there's a few things that I'm sure that fueled kind of and is fueling this, right? I mean, obviously, Google has to keep making more money. They have to keep pleasing their stakeholders and different things there. But probably one of the bigger things here is and we get into this a lot more with the blog, but with GDPR, CCPA coming out, the privacy standards that are now slowly being enacted, obviously in Europe, but slowly being enacted here in the States as well, and obviously, hopefully worldwide eventually. It's really forcing the amount of ads that can go out, and it's also kind of reinforcing the amount of data people can get towards targeting different things like that. And so because of that, I'm sure, obviously nothing's been stated yet, but I'm sure there have been losses due to some of those privacy
In some
updates.
revenue.
And so
Yeah.
it makes sense that they are trying to make that up and gain more by pushing into some of these other spheres. Mobile is probably one of the biggest ones that I think everybody just kind of naturally scrolls past, right? Which is why everybody wants SEO. But doing a few queries the other day to get some images, it was shocking how if you do any sort of transactional query on your phone, sometimes you're scrolling 4 or 5 screens just to get to the organic listings because they've just beefed up those mobile ads. And
Yep.
I get that that's where, they're trying to make up that ground, but it just means that organic is getting harder. It's getting more competitive. And I expect this trend will kind of keep going and it will, maybe hit critical mass before it dies down as most things do. But we'll see. Unfortunately, 2019 did see a few things. The biggest one you've already hit on is maps, and the fact that they're including that in paid it's a little sad, but I'm sure a lot of people are taking advantage of that to jump their own margins, which is good.
Yeah.
But it does ding a little bit on the organic side.
And I like that you mentioned the GDPR and the CCPA in regards to ad and that kind of data mining and that kind of information that people will have to serve out smart ads. In the blog post that we're going to be posting, that's something that we hit on specifically is that GDPR, the CCPA, even though it's like bookended, the GDPR came out mid 2018 and CCPA went into effect beginning of this year. Still, 2019 was a year where users valued their privacy, valued their data, and they took a lot of control back from large companies where they were using their data maybe in a way that they didn't want to. And so those kind of laws are, like we mentioned, hopefully going to be rolling out worldwide where we take back control in that instance.
Yeah.
So that does it for 2019. Again, check out the blog for more, but we're going to switch gears and we're going to go over into 2020 SEO predictions.
Awesome. I'll take it from here. So, 2020, what did we learn from 2019? How do we think that's going to affect the new year? Just moving right into it, the very first one we think, which is, I think, a no-brainer for everybody, but mobile first, specifically having your content friendly on mobile. Specifically for this one, it's actually the functionality that we think will become more imperative when it comes to ranking. So as an example here, having forms that when you click on it, it actually pulls up a keyboard that actually makes sense for that form. You don't want somebody, if they have to type a number, to be going through 3 different keyboards.
Their keyboard, and switching it up. That's inconvenient.
Basically, if it annoys you, it's gonna certainly annoy your user, right? So functionality there on top of, if you have a tool inside of your website, making sure that is also mobile friendly. I don't know if anybody's been out there, but financial sector here, calling out to you. You'd be surprised how many tools don't actually respond mobily. They're still blown up. So the website is totally fine, but then all of a sudden this tool is cut off for no reason. So I would suspect highly, especially moving into 2020, that functionality will be a bigger indication, which obviously that has some stemming and some relation to just general site usability, but especially on mobile. I think that's going to be a much bigger thing, especially heading into the next decade, so to speak. So.
Oh yeah, and just definitely how, like, you've probably heard in the past, make sure that your site is mobile friendly, right? And that's going to evolve, just like the content and the intent and those kinds of, like, what quality content means. What mobile friendliness means for your site will mean those kind of integrations, those kind of make it easy for a mobile user to be able to fill out your forms, make it easy for them to be able to interact with your site, with your product, right? That kind of technology is going to be huge in 2020.
Absolutely. So this then stems into our next one. So content understanding, and very similar to how Bert is understanding queries better. They're understanding kind of relationships between, again, those additives, those negatives, maybe multiple additives, multiple negatives, whatever it might be. We've already started seeing this when it comes to Panda and some of those other kind of core algorithm updates that are targeted towards one specific section or multiple, sections of a site. This is one that I think will also come out and will probably be its own algorithm update. But essentially, understanding how content plays into other pieces of content, either internally on the site or even potentially external from the site, if that's where you're pushing users. And this is a little bit more key than a little bit more specific than past kind of content is king predictions. This is much more specific around if you have a paragraph of content and then let's say you have a form fill out below for a lead, does that actually make sense? Are you on that page talking about something that would lead a user to that form fill, or is it really just like we often have done here, a shameless plug, right? I'm just kidding. But it's one of those where does it make sense to have multiple pieces of content? Are they actually talking to each other? Does it actually make sense there? And if it's not making sense, then that might be a negative for you as a website. If it does make sense, then that might mean that you actually know your user, that you actually know your content. And again, you're authoritative and kind of expertive when it comes to servicing your industry. And that's where I see those people getting rewarded. So content understanding, I think it'll be a much bigger thing. I think we may even see, the Panda 3.0, or I think they're on like version 15 at this point.
So not really 3.0.
So not really 3.0, but 3.0 in the sense that it will be a major shift as to how they look at it.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the recap, in 2019, we saw Google's algorithm get smarter. So in 2020, it's going to get smarter. Like we can only assume. And this is like we've always stated, like you mentioned, content is king. Content is king. But now we're looking in intent. We're looking in, okay, you can't just have those form fill pages, like you mentioned, with a ball of text or a paragraph of text.
Or a wall.
Yeah, and because it doesn't make sense for the user. Like you have to
engage them.
Yeah, you have to really engage your audience for sure.
Yep. And stemming off of this and just going right into the next one, the action versus content, and this is exactly what you're saying. Instead of, it's no longer the walls of text that we see, it's more the functionality on top of that. And then at the end of the day, and Google has been saying this for years, especially when it comes to mobile and specifically on their paid side of things, they've really advocated that you need to help a user accomplish something, whether that's learning, purchasing, setting an appointment, whatever it might be, learning potentially. If your content isn't leading somebody to completing a task or an action or a goal, then you might as well just not have content.
Yeah.
And so again, more pointed towards maybe an update or something that's kind of being valued and maybe devalued here would be, does your content lead to one of those actions? Or is it truly just a wall of text? And this might be where we see blogs eventually getting replaced with businesses or more specific content that does have some of these better kind of intent and action oriented elements within them.
Oh yeah. Just like we've mentioned before and like we mentioned in the past, that action and that content, like having content that is simple, it's concise, it resolves the issue. That's not the word that I want to use, but it serves up the purpose. It's that purposeful content. And like we mentioned in 2019, that quality rater guidelines update, I keep on throwing back to 2019, but we're doing predictions.
We're just barely out of 2019, so we
That's where my mind is. That's where my mind is.
One question that just came in though is, give us an example of what an action is. Is that perhaps being able to book an appointment on a website? What is an action type item?
So just to restate, just to make sure it's clear, basically, what is an action, right? What does that actually mean? If I have a we'll kind of throw back here. If I have a coffee shop here, using the picture here as an example, if I have a coffee shop, what action am I trying to actually service there? And so that might be one of those where, as an example, if I'm a coffee shop and let's say I make specialty cakes or something like that, if somebody's looking for cakes, can I take an order on my website? Can somebody actually accomplish that on the website? Is there maybe, a chat on the website that somebody can quickly ask questions and again, help accomplish something? If it's a coffee shop, maybe it's more oriented around just showing availability. Maybe I'm here, my prices are this. If you want to buy, coupons or whatever, you can do that on the site. If you want to manage your, maybe your account or whatever it might be, that can all be there too. Probably more so this action probably plays into more of the your money, your life type stuff where it's, transactional, your life, something like that. So, another example of action might be if somebody has, let's say that they have an e-commerce site and they're selling products. Do you allow somebody to buy directly from you? Maybe you're referring them to somewhere else, whatever it might be. If somebody has a question specifically, are you able to educate them on that? Is it something that you need to push them somewhere else? Home calculators, mortgages, things like this. Do you have a tool that actually allows them to do that kind of calculation
on your site? Those kind of integrations, those are the actions, and that kind of technology is very, very important. And in 2020, it's only going to get more important. So
yeah.
You feel like that answers?
Yes. Thank you.
Nice job, Colton.
Sweet. Winging it on a hope and a prayer here. Just kidding. So then moving into the next one, which the writing's on the wall here. We've seen and we're already seeing this integration happen kind of on a more mass scale. But I think for the small business owner and even just websites in general, automation will be a much bigger deal heading into 2020. And this might be a slight overshoot here, but probably more so in 2021, just to be fair. But website automation, and this we're starting to see this heavily in the form of chats. So bot chat bots, sorry, is what we call them. So somebody coming to the site, they have a question, and then you're trying to use bots or somebody not taking a resource from your business to hopefully funnel that person down to either asking the actual question that they want, maybe getting them to a point of purchasing, making an appointment, whatever it might be. And we already see some available technologies around, content creation, automatic social posting. Hell, there's even ones for video creation, believe it or not. So I would be highly surprised if in 2020 we don't see a lot more automation and a lot more automation adoption, which hinging off of that, I think we'll have to have some regulation from Google, from search engines specifically, because if everybody is using automated ways of creating content, then everybody starts to create these pieces of content that are then referencing themselves. So just to give some kind of back clarity here, for automatic content creation, typically it will scrape existing content for either a search, a query, or a database. And then it goes through and it tries to essentially stuff things together using similar to how BERT does, where it understands relationships and this makes sense here.
And sentiments and those kind of things.
Exactly, yep. And so it tries to smash that all together and then say, here's a piece of copy around your subject. But if everybody starts using that, all of a sudden you have automated pieces of content being referenced for making more automated pieces of content. And so it really just starts to devolve into a place that it's not really quality. It doesn't really help a user, and it sounds funny potentially. So I definitely expect automation to continue to grow, but I also do expect that if it grows too much, there will be the heavy hand of Google putting everybody back in their place, unfortunately.
and potentially penalizing those types of content that are so obviously written either for bots or by bots or what
they do that today, right? So that the penalty, the actions are already there. Whether they have to tighten that or kind of add more constraints and definition to what that actually means, I think that's where we'll see the changes going into 2020. Because to everybody's point, right? It's pretty easy to see a bad piece of content or content that doesn't read easily. But what happens if all of a sudden, you ask a writer to write something, you pay a writer, you have somebody internal write something, and then you spin up this automated piece of content, and realistically, they all are about the same quality, and you really can't tell. And that is where I think there will be a little bit more definition around it.
You also mentioned in the slide ad optimization with regards to AI. Can you expand on that a little bit more when you're referring to ad optimization?
Yeah. So on the PPC side, on the paid side, not necessarily on the SEO side, but definitely on the AdWords side of things, a little bit of AdSense as far as I'm aware, and then obviously you have social sites that you can also optimize. A lot of these companies, Google has already rolled this out. I think Facebook is still trying to roll their version out. But basically, it's you feed an algorithm, or you feed their algorithm all of your data, whether that's how much you're spending. You basically just open your account to them. You open your account to them, and then they go through and they say, okay, based off of how many impressions you're getting, what you're actually bidding on, how much you're paying, you should actually do this. And it just changes it for you. It just goes and says, I'm just going to tweak this here. And then again, depending on how that goes, then I'm going to tweak it again at some point in the future. A lot of people have done studies specifically around the paid side showing that if you have the money for it, it works really well. But it costs thousands of dollars. So you would imagine if you could throw money at it, do it. But if you can't, you're probably just going to waste your money if you're throwing $200 at, AI-driven ad spending.
And I imagine that there's also the fear that, like, if you give Google the wheel over your ads, they're going to serve themselves the most, right? They're not going to make the best business decision for your business. And I've heard that as far as a counter argument to those AI-driven or that smart ad giving Google the wheel kind of deal, which I imagine that it works and it doesn't work. So it really depends on the business. But like you said, you've seen that it works, but you've got to spend a lot of money.
You got to spend a lot of money, and you got to do it consistently. That's the big thing, is that this kind of stuff does not happen overnight, but it happens over a long period of time. And so effectively what you have here, and you've already hit on it, is that if you're really in line with your business, there's probably not a whole lot of need, because you understand who your core demographic is, who your typical customer is, and how you can try to reach those people. But if you're coming into a pretty competitive market and you really don't know, and you're just kind of there for the money, so to speak, and you have money to kind of burn and churn on this, then AI is great for it, because it will allow you to get that expertise and that kind of underhanded understanding of your customers versus not. But to your point, there are a lot of risks that can potentially come with that. It's a big black box. I don't know exactly what's going into that. So you do lose quite a bit when you do that, but it automates, and that freedom might be something that a lot of people want. I will kind of disagree in the sense that I don't necessarily think Google will use this in a bad way, not at first, because they want to gain mass adoption, right? And so I do believe, at least right now and probably for the next few years, it is going to be very much in the interest of the business and just trying to really help the business owner. But who knows when they flip that switch and when it could become a little bit more self-serving. I think it really just depends on adoption. If this gets full-blown adopted by most people doing AdWords in the next year or two, then 3 years from now, I could see where that would be, a realistic possibility. But, who knows? Few years down the road, I believe.
Ooh.
All right. And then the last one, I believe, right? So
this is the big one.
Here.
The big one, right? The big prediction.
The big one, again, I think the blood is on the wall here. Or, sorry, writing is on the wall.
The blood?
The technology is on the wall. Basically, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with this. But heading into 2020, I think we will continue to see more paid instances where organic used to be. And I think that's just a shift from they have to make up money that they potentially lost. They have to keep making more than what they've made the year previous. And this could manifest in a few different ways. Probably the biggest ones that we're seeing now is that if you look at your Maps profile, or you go to just any Maps profile, there are suggested businesses there. And those suggested businesses are not your business. They're not even related to you in some cases. And so that might be an instance where they're showing a competitor who's right next to you, and you could potentially pay to not have that be the case, to where you are the only provider there. Another one, especially in the GMB space, could be maybe other kind of featured content or featured areas there. We already see this on Google My Business, and you guys have already said it. When you do a search, sometimes that little pin is green, sometimes it's yellow. Yesterday when I was pulling images, they were all purple. So you might be able to pay. You might be able to pay for what color pin you want, or potentially getting featured. Right, a red pin shows up a little bit better than a green pin, but a green pin may have a better buying indicator over the standard little blue pins. Right? Who knows?
Who knows?
So I think that there's a lot of foray there that they'll probably dabble with and test and do micro testing on, which they did with the paid ads inside of GMB. I think either towards the end of 2018 or even early 2019 before kind of releasing it en masse. So that's one bit. The biggest one that I have all my little chips stacked on here.
You're going all in.
Is voice search. I guarantee you, at least in some way, voice search will be monetized. I mean, the medium itself is growing. It's becoming larger and larger. Hasn't surpassed quite everything else, but I suspect in the next year or two, if predictions stay the same, and thus far they're holding really strong to that trend, that's going to be one of the largest versions of search, and monetizing that would be, just to be frank, stupid if they don't monetize that. How they monetize that, we'll have to wait and see. Amazon, as an example, is already monetizing this in the sense that anything buying oriented or just kind of purchase oriented is already powered by their site, their software, their products. And so they're already monetizing this, but Google, not so much. That, if you're looking for something to buy, I'm sure that there are a few queries that people have optimized for, and they can, help push you to a specific vendor. But I don't think that's a huge thing right now. But I could see where that easily becomes we'll push it to your website if you're willing to pay X amount per month to service these people, service this voice query.
I think big news if true. But like you said, you're putting all of your chips, you're going all in on this.
Yep.
I'd be surprised as well. Like we mentioned, voice search grew significantly in 2019. It's only going to grow more. They would be stupid not to monetize, like you said.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, it's the last point here, but one thing regardless, which is where, again, putting all the chips in, and the reason why is that this is just a safe bet. Organics, unfortunately, will continue to lose kind of space and visibility, where paid, I think, will encroach on that. And really what that means for everybody in the organic side of things is it just is going to be harder to get in there. More rewarding, because we already see this today, organic ads and organic leads and listings. They have natively, more trust. They have a lot more buying, conversions, things like that. So we already know that people don't necessarily want paid all the time, and it's kind of being forced on the throat for right now. But I suspect that trend will continue easily into 2020. And hopefully, like I said, once it kind of hits that critical mass where it's just really not serving the user no more, it'll get taken back. And when that happens, everybody who has done their due diligence kind of through this trying time, so to speak, will benefit and get rewarded. So it's definitely not a time to pull back. If anything, it's a time to do more and really solidify your name, so that way, hopefully once this stuff gets kind of pulled back, you can benefit greatly.
And invest in those technologies, invest in that kind of that quality content that's constantly changing. Another plug here at Boostability, we do offer a lot of SMBs and a lot of partners these kinds of products, the products that are driven by these the predictions, the looking at the data, seeing what we see and making decisions for our customers that are smart, work for them. It's something that we pride ourselves on. Been doing it since 2009, and my boy Colton here for past 10 years. He's been at Boostability, and he's helped us refine our product and work with our SMBs and our partners. And so it's something that there's our plug.
Shameless as always. No, but I mean, you're right. We're all about action. We're all about just getting things done, and that's at least a large part of my role is just making sure that we are doing the right things and that they're being done in a way that can kind of be done, en masse, if you will, and just kind of acceptable for everybody. So
Yeah.
we'll continue doing that. And obviously our work is getting tougher and tougher, especially with kind of organics dwindling away, if you will, because of paid. But I think, again, people who keep on the path, keep on doing what they need to do, they're going to be rewarded. And they are rewarded today. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Otherwise, the SEO industry and just organic search in general, it really wouldn't be a thing, right?
Yeah.
So it'll continue. And hopefully it just gets better going forward.
For sure.
Awesome. So we do have a couple questions that have come in. For anyone else, those are the end of our main key predictions, but if you do have questions, we are taking them for about 10 more minutes, so you can submit it here through the platform or through Twitter. But on this note, as we move into questions, I do want to ask this one. So Boostability, like you mentioned, we do service small businesses worldwide than anyone else. In the world of your pay to play, throwing all your money into that, how do the little guys compete with some of these bigger budgets for people that can engage in pay to play?
Pay to play, I think that is basically the name of the game there. So, small businesses, as long as you're optimizing the ads for, terms that are actually related to your business, again, those high kind of buying intent terms, maybe some broad just to get your brand out there. But just, again, being strategic, being smart about your spends, I think you still compete, and you compete very well, especially against kind of more of the AI. But I hate to say it, and this is why organics is such a big thing, but in the pay-to-play space, if you have the bigger budget, you'll win every single time. It's how much you win that is ultimately the definition of, if you'll come back. AI, considering that they need the adoption there so that people will just kind of blindly trust the algorithm, so to speak, I think it's going to do its best to help those who spend. Again, it really just puts more pressure on ad managers and people that are, handling those smaller customers, those lower spends for ads. It puts the pressure on them to just really show that they actually know what they're talking about. And to be fair, that will probably help flesh out people who really don't know what they're doing and keep the actual experts kind of in the field. We see this SEO especially, right? That's why you have a lot of SEO companies come and go. But definitely, I think, at least just to kind of answer it plainly, they can compete. They just have to know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, then I hate to say it, they are going to probably lose if somebody can't afford the AI ad management.
Or they should partner with Boostability.
We don't do paid.
You're right. But if you want that organic,
absolutely, on the organic side,
we at Boostability can help you. I think that along those lines for SMB specifically, if you understand your niche, you understand what you provide, your product, what how you're servicing your clients, and understanding that, you have to bring something to the table. You have to bring something that's unique. You have to, and then push on that significantly. And so that's definitely that's business 101. And marketing 101. You've really got to push that.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, another question we got is, how important will backlinks be in 2020?
That's a very good question. You want to take the first stab at this?
I have been, so before I was on the marketing team, I was doing guest blogging and guest posting en masse, and I was building links organically with well-written content from native English speakers, and it's something that we built out a good network that we would work with regularly with a bunch of trusted individuals. So I have a special place in my heart for backlinks. I think that the nature of how we build backlinks is going to change. It already has changed significantly. Whenever I get proselyted or solicited for a backlink for Boostability, I chuckle because it's very evident. but it's necessary. I think that those kind of indicators are not going to go away. Back in 2012, when Matt Cutts came out against guest blogging, he was everyone's worst enemy, at least in the industry that I was in. And so it's never really going to go away. It's just you need to make sure that you're smart about how you're building your links, what you're doing, and that it has a purpose. You don't want to just go cast a wide net out there. You don't want to just be doing it willy-nilly. You want to build relationships, build partnerships. If you're doing a link exchange, make sure that the link exchange that that both are being serviced, and that it's a partnership where that you're building off each other. And Google will look at that and recognize that you're referencing each other, and then your EAT score will go up, your organic,
trust.
hopefully, your trust will just increase. So to answer the question, backlinks still very, very relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so we don't have any studies that we've published, but the others have. Our data does show it, at least from kind of a general sense. But there are definitely studies out there, very pointed studies. I think, what is it, Stone Temple? They do one every single year. Moz always does one. So you can definitely find them out there. And basically, they do prove and show that if you have links are vital to seeing organic success. So are they valuable? Yes. How much will they be valuable? I think that changes, and that's where I would kind of add the caveat onto that, which is you have to do it for either the size of your business or the size you want your business to be. To your point, if you're competing with the Adobes of the world or these huge corporations, then you have to have the same budget and the same level of effort in acquiring links to compete on their level.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, if you're a local business and you're competing with 4 other people in your area,
it doesn't take a lot of
you don't
links.
have to. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to go to that level of effort. Instead, a few pointed links, a few links that are kind of within the good guidelines, then yeah, you'll be fine. Having that variance out there is always good, just to protect on some things that may gain, some things that may lose. It's never a good idea, just to make sure it's clear, it's never a good idea to go after one type or one kind of link.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to have some sort of diversity. So that way,
Your
even if
profile.
one kind of link gets, dinged, it's not taking down your entire website, which is something we definitely saw with, something like Penguin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where one specific kind or a few key signals tanked people because they had nothing else.
And because they were abusing the system at the time.
Yeah, abusing the system in kind of a singular way, which is how it was kind of easy to target.
Mm-hmm. I think that also, if you look back at 2019, Google released the nofollow references, where they wanted to define the intent or specifically they gave nofollow a little bit more information. They're looking at these links. They're always going to be looking at these links. It's just another indicator where they have the user generated content. They have the sponsored nofollow. They have those things. They're going through and they're looking at those links. Like,
to be clear, they want that.
Yeah.
I don't think, especially attending a few conferences and hearing, experts' opinion on this, they want this data. To your point, they want to understand kind of the origin of these links.
Yeah.
Between me and you, I don't think they're gonna get it.
I haven't
Nobody
seen
wants
any.
to adopt that because it's a pain in the ass to push out for.
Yeah.
No direct ROI or benefit. Who knows?
Yeah.
It might be.
All you're doing is helping
correct,
Google,
maybe.
but they're not giving back. Like, they're not like, if I did this, would it help me rank better?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Sorry. Wild tangent about links. Don't get us started. We love links.
That's okay. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. I want to get through 2 specific questions. One, he says, traditionally the click-through features on PPC are so low that our clients have way more success with a combination of great SEO and social boosting. How do you sell around that?
Good one. So first off, I'll point out that there is kind of a logical reason why that's happening. I think 2015 is when they rolled out the whole ranges bit inside of AdWords. And part of that is that they started to bundle keywords. So realistically, when you're buying a keyword or potentially a set of keywords, you may be getting tons of keywords underneath that. And in some cases, if you don't filter it correctly, you're getting broad keywords put in there where as an example, if you're selling Mac laptops and you are going after the term Apple laptops, Apple may accidentally be included in that search. So, selling around that, getting around that kind of bit, that's where, and I think the person asking a question is already doing this, but go strong on organic, try to really build your footprint there, try to, again, kind of gleaming back on the 2020 predictions, make sure your content is usable, especially on mobile. Make sure your content is supporting each other, and that at the end of the page, so to speak, is leading somebody to some sort of action. And even if it's education, make sure that you're reinforcing what that education is, what somebody should have learned by reading, your article, your blog, whatever it might have been. So I think getting around that, definitely focus on organics. But then, just to be fair and frank, and we all have these businesses, but it might be a time to, do the thing that everybody has been getting away from. But it might be going more towards some physical promotion, some native promotion, something that is more visible to your clients locally. If you're in that local hemisphere, it might be pushing into other mediums like radio or TV temporarily to reinforce that your brand is the brand for whatever somebody's looking for within your vertical or niche.
Great. Okay, we have one more question that I want to get to here, and then a few others that we'll answer over email to you directly. But in this couple minutes we have left, back to the pay-to-play question. He says, is pay-to-play only meaning Google ads, and what role will SEO or organic search actually matter in the future?
That's a good question. Google has the lion's share of all of the ad revenue. There are Bing ads, there are other ads you can do, ads on Amazon, you can do ads all over the place. But Google, when we refer to ads, I imagine that we're referring predominantly to AdSense and Google Ads.
Well, and some bit of clarification there might be, it also depends on where your visitors are. Some businesses obviously thrive off of, Instagram ads, something like that. So if you're within Instagram, just be wary of, what ads are getting pushed and how much are kind of encroaching on that organic territory. My wife, she loves Instagram. And so one of the complaints I hear from her is like, this kind of stems into voice search, but hey, I'm scrolling through this and also why am I getting like, cat litter kind of ads? And it's because we were talking about something completely unrelated. And so it's coming out. But the bigger point there related to this is we're seeing more ads in, something like Instagram. We're seeing more ads in something like Facebook. Facebook has pulled back on that to try to commit to their core values of, engaging in your life's moments. But again, I don't expect that kind of cutesy trend to continue. I expect everybody will eventually start going full bore. And I guarantee you it starts going full bore, especially with other companies, if Google can release amazing numbers.
Yeah. And definitely don't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, try Bing ads, try other ads, but when we're referring to Google.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we want to recap real quick for all of you who tuned in late. Give us a quick.
Yep. So heading into 2020, the trends that you need to be aware of. First one is just going to be making sure that your content is all mobile friendly, just kind of that mobile first mentality. But the greater deal there is just make sure that it's functional. Make sure that it actually works. Make sure that if a user is actually going to click on things within your site, especially on mobile, that it works for a user on mobile. So if you're a business owner and you haven't in the last month done a quick kind of go through of your site and trying to get yourself leads with your own phone, do it. Make sure everything's working. And if there are things that you're like, that's kind of a pain, address it, because I guarantee you everybody else is thinking the same thing. Second one, content understanding, just making sure that your content is up to par and that it is what Google would expect to be there. And kind of going direct full back into that is make sure that your content is something that works with the other pieces on there. Make sure that you actually have a point to having that content there. Right into, the next one, which is the action versus content. You want to make sure that all of your pages, regardless of where they are, and if you need to, go back and trim your pages, make sure that all of your pages have some sort of action. Again, if it's straight educational, make sure that you have a synopsis at the bottom informing what should have been educated or what should have been learned from your topic. If somebody's coming to that page and there's the potential that they want to schedule a time or schedule a block with you or whatever it might be, give them that functionality, let them do that. And then, website, automation, huge. Again, we already see this with chatbots predominantly for now. That's kind of the big hot topic last year. So big adoption there. This is going to bleed into content. This is going to bleed into social posting. This is going to bleed. It's already bleeding into paid ads. So it will definitely bleed into email marketing, video marketing, everything else. So there might be some take back there from Google, but we'll see. And then the last one is just ads are going to they're going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to take over organic space. Again, not a time to pull back by any means from organic promotion or work. It's more of a time that you have to lean in. You have to kind of go full in there. So that way, when that eventually gets penalized or pulled back or whatever it might be, you can be there and you can take up that real estate. And if you do it correctly, in the meantime, you can actually move your competitors. You can push them off that first page and start getting that minimalized benefit yourself, or marginalized, I guess, benefit, right? You want to make sure that you're getting the people that are looking for that high buying intent. That's why organic search is a thing.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much. And
like I said earlier, or like we shamelessly plugged earlier, Boostability, it's our specialty to do SEO. We are the #1 provider of white label SEO in the world. We do that through partners and we do it for small businesses. So you can reach out to us on our website or our phone number. It's right there on the screen. And then if anyone has any questions or want to reach out to you guys directly, what are your Twitter handles?
So for me, it's at Big C SEO, big guy. That's why it's big. So there you go.
And for me, Mike, it's at The Marsh Speaks.
At The Marsh Speaks. Sweet. Okay, great. Thank you everyone again for attending. Thank you to Mike and Colton for tuning in. And again, you can reach out to them directly or you can reach out to us on Twitter and we will be happy to respond. This link for the webinar will be up on our YouTube page later this afternoon, and we will also send it out in an email. So thank you again, and we'll talk again soon.